On my daughter's wedding day, I gave her a $10,000 check I'd saved for years. Her new husband snatched it from her hands, tore it in half, and sneered. "You're so petty and useless." The ballroom was loud, the music echoing off the high ceilings, but our corner of the room went completely still. I stared at the pieces of paper fluttering to the carpet. That money represented 4 years of skipped vacations, careful grocery shopping, and quiet sacrifices since my husband passed away. I looked up at Jared, his face flushed with arrogance. "Your daughter told me you sold the lake cabin for $80,000 last year." Jared scoffed, crossing his arms. "10 grand is an insult. Keep your spare change." "Monica." I shifted my gaze to Lily. My daughter stood there in her white gown, holding a glass of champagne. She looked down at the floor. She did not defend me. She did not tell him to stop. She simply took a sip of her drink and looked away. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice or cause a scene. Crying is for people who believe their tears will change the outcome. At 62, I knew better. I bent down, picked up the torn halves of the check, and placed them back into my purse. I smoothed the fabric of my dress. "Enjoy your evening," I told them both. I turned my back and walked out of the reception hall. The cool night air hit my face as I reached the parking lot. I unlocked my sedan, sat in the driver's seat, and pulled out my phone. I didn't drive home immediately. Instead, I sat in the quiet dark and made 3 calls. I walked away and made 3 calls. The next morning, their reality was going to look very different. My first call was to the luxury travel agency. I had booked and paid for their 2-week honeymoon to Maui on my personal credit card as a surprise. The agent answered on the 3rd ring. "This is Monica Barrett," I stated. "I need to cancel the itinerary for Lily and Jared." "Yes. The flight tomorrow morning. Cancel all of it. Refund the balance to my card ending in 41002. The agent processed it without a question. My second call was to my bank's automated 24-hour service line. For the past 2 years, I had a scheduled auto transfer of $1,500 going into Lily's account on the 1st of every month to help her build savings. I navigated the keypad menu, punched in my security PIN, and deleted the recurring transfer. The automated voice confirmed the cancellation. My third call was to the property manager of the upscale downtown apartment they were supposed to move into after their honeymoon. I was the financial guarantor on the lease. I had also promised to bring the cashier's check for their first and last month's rent on Monday. I left a direct voicemail. "This is Monica Barrett, guarantor for Unit 4B. I am withdrawing my financial backing, and I will not be providing the deposit. You may want to contact the tenants regarding their move-in status." I placed my phone in the passenger seat, started the engine, and drove home. I walked into my quiet house, brewed a cup of chamomile tea, and went to bed. I slept better than I had in months. At 6 a.m. the next morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a picture from the airport check-in counter, followed by 5 missed calls. Jared and Lily had just discovered the new boundaries. I poured myself a cup of black coffee before I picked up the phone. Lily was calling for the 6th time. I tapped the screen and brought it to my ear. "Mom, finally!" Lily's voice was frantic, accompanied by the loud background noise of the airport terminal. "The airline is saying our tickets are invalid. They said the buyer canceled them last night. Call your bank." "There must be a mistake." "There is no mistake." I took a slow sip of my coffee. Jared made it clear my financial contributions were useless. A useless woman does not fund luxury vacations. Silence stretched over the line. Then, Jared's voice boomed in the background. "Give me the phone, Monica. You listen to me." I ended the call. I set the phone face down on the kitchen counter and went to water my orchids. 10 minutes later, a text popped up from Lily. "We can't go to the apartment. The manager just emailed Jared. He voided our lease because you pulled the deposit. Where are we supposed to go?" I typed back a single sentence. "You are adults. Figure it out." An hour later, a heavy pounding rattled my front door. I looked through the peephole. Jared and Lily stood on my porch, surrounded by 4 large suitcases. Jared's face was red, his fists clenched at his sides. Lily looked exhausted, her makeup smudged from the morning's panic. I unlocked the wooden door, but kept the metal security screen firmly bolted. I crossed my arms and looked at them through the mesh. "Open the door." "Monica," Jared demanded, gripping the handle of a suitcase. "We have nowhere else to go. All our stuff is in storage. This is my home," I replied evenly. "Not a hotel." Lily stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Mom, please. Just for a few days until we figure out the apartment situation." I studied my daughter. She made her choice last night. But I am a practical woman. "You can use the guest room for exactly 7 days, I stated. "The rent is $500 paid right now, in cash. And Jared, if you raise your voice in my house once, the locks change while you are at work." Jared sneered, reaching for his wallet. He had no idea what staying here would actually cost him. Jared slapped $500 bills against the mesh of the screen door. I took the cash, folded it into my pocket, and unbolted the lock. They dragged their suitcases inside, scraping the wheels against my hardwood floors. Jared didn't offer a word of thanks. He walked straight past me, dumped his jacket on my velvet armchair, and headed for the kitchen to open the refrigerator. 7 days, I reminded them, picking up his jacket and handing it to Lily. "Keep your things in your room." The week began, and Jared immediately treated my home like his personal territory. He left his dirty cereal bowls on the coffee table. He walked through the living room with muddy boots. He blasted the television volume late at night while I was trying to read in my study. He thought he could test my patience. He thought I would nag, complain, or yell like a typical mother-in-law. I don't nag. I act. On Tuesday morning, I found his greasy pizza plates abandoned on my living room rug. I picked them up, walked into the guest room while they were in the bathroom, and placed the dirty plates directly under Jared's blankets, right on his pillow. On Wednesday night, the television roared through the walls at midnight. I walked to the hallway breaker box, flipped the switch for the living room, and locked the metal panel with a small padlock. The house plunged into silence. I heard Jared stumble in the dark, cursing loudly. Lily's hushed voice tried to calm him down. The next morning, Lily caught me in the kitchen. "Mom, you're being incredibly hostile. Jared is really stressed about finding us a place. He is stressed because his actions have consequences." I stirred my oatmeal. "You're ruining our first week of marriage," she whispered. I looked at her. "You watched your husband tear up a $10,000 gift and call me useless. You chose your husband, Lily. I choose my peace." I turned to leave the kitchen when I noticed something missing from the hallway console table. The spare keys to my late husband's vintage Mustang were gone. I checked the brass hook on the console table twice. The keys were definitely gone. My husband's 1968 Mustang sat under a tarp in the garage. I rarely drove it, but I maintained it meticulously. Jared had eyed that car for years, dropping hints about taking it for a spin. I didn't confront him. I didn't run to the guest room demanding answers. I walked through the kitchen door into the garage. The car was still there. First, I pulled the stepladder from the wall, climbed up, and unplugged the automatic garage door opener from the ceiling outlet. Then, I slid the manual deadbolt on the garage track and slipped a thick padlock through the hole. Nobody was opening that door from the inside or the outside. Next, I pulled back the tarp, popped the Mustang's hood, and grabbed my toolbox. I unscrewed the spark plugs, disconnected the main battery cable, and placed the components into a rag. I locked the hood, covered the car, and walked back inside, carrying the parts straight to my bedroom safe. Around noon, Jared strutted into the kitchen smelling of cheap cologne. He poured himself a glass of orange juice. "A buddy of mine is coming over later to look at the Mustang," Jared announced, not making eye contact. "Lily said my car has a weird sound, so I'm going to borrow yours for the week." He didn't ask. He informed me. I smiled thinly, drying my hands on a dish towel. "Go ahead and try to start it." Jared grabbed the keys from his pocket and marched out to the garage. A minute later, I heard the heavy clunk of him trying to force the garage door up. Then, the sound of the engine turning over a flat, dead, clicking noise that echoed through the walls. The kitchen door swung open violently. Jared stood there, his face purple with rage, holding the useless keys. "What did you do to the car?" Jared demanded, tossing the keys onto the kitchen island. "I secured my property," I answered calmly, pouring myself a fresh cup of tea. "The car is not yours to drive, and it is certainly not yours to show to your friends." Jared slammed his hands on the counter. "We need a car. How are we supposed to get to work? How are we supposed to go look at apartments? Take the bus. The stop is 2 blocks away." He cursed under his breath and stormed back to the guest room. I stayed in the kitchen. The walls in this house are old, but they are not soundproof. A few minutes later, I heard Jared's muffled voice through the drywall. He was on the phone, pacing. "I told you I'd have the money," Jared hissed. "The old lady is hoarding it." "No. She canceled the apartment check. I can't pay you this week. Give me a few days. I'll figure something out." I paused, leaning slightly closer to the wall. "Look, I owe 30 grand on the cards." "Okay." Jared's voice cracked with panic. "The wedding gift was supposed to cover the immediate minimums. If you repossess my truck, I lose my job. Just give me until Friday. I'm going to sell her classic car." I stepped back, the pieces falling into place. Jared didn't tear up the $10,000 check because it was too small. He tore it up because it was written specifically to Lily to be deposited into her private account. He needed cash, fast, to cover his massive secret debts. He expected me to fund their lives so he could use his income to dig himself out of a hole. He wasn't just arrogant, he was desperate. And he thought he could use my home as his personal ATM. I walked into my study, sat at my desk, and picked up my phone. It was time to accelerate the timeline. It was day 6 of their 7-day agreement. I woke up early, the house still quiet. I knew Jared's truck had been parked down the street, likely hiding it from the repo men he had argued with on the phone while they were sleeping. I went into the guest room. I didn't wake them. I simply pulled their 4 large suitcases from the closet and laid them open in the hallway. Quietly, methodically. I went into their bathroom. I grabbed their toothbrushes, Lily's expensive skincare bottles, and Jared's shaving kit, tossing them into the bags. Then I heard Jared talking in the backyard. I looked out the window. He was on his phone, pacing the grass. "Yeah, bring the truck around 10:00 a.m., Jared instructed. "We're going to empty our storage unit into her basement. Once the furniture is in, she can't legally kick us out without a 30-day eviction notice. Just bring the heavy stuff. The couches, the dining table. We're staying put." He hung up, looking smug. He wanted to play games with residency. He wanted to trap me in my own home. I walked downstairs, grabbed my car keys, and stepped out the front door. I got into my sedan and started the engine. I drove it off the street and parked it horizontally, completely blocking the entrance to my driveway. I locked the doors and pocketed the keys. There was no way a moving truck could get anywhere near my garage or my front door. I went back inside. I finished packing their suitcases, zipped them up, and dragged them one by one onto the front porch. At exactly 10:00 a.m., the rumble of a large diesel engine echoed down the street. The moving truck stopped in the road, honking its horn. My sedan was in the way. Jared rushed out the front door, stopping dead in his tracks when he saw his luggage sitting on the porch. Jared sprinted down the porch steps, waving his arms at the moving truck. He turned around and glared at my car blocking the driveway. I stepped out onto the porch, holding a single sheet of paper. "Move your car," Jared shouted. "The guys need to back in. We're bringing our furniture from storage." Lily came rushing out behind me in her robe, seeing the bags and the truck. "Mom, what is going on? Why is our stuff packed?" I walked down the steps and handed the printed paper to Jared. He snatched it, looking down at the text. "I paid for 1 month at a self-storage unit facility exactly 3 miles down the highway." I stated clearly. "Your movers can take your furniture there. The address and the gate code are on that receipt." "You can't do this," Jared yelled, stepping toward me. The movers in the truck rolled down their window, watching the scene unfold. "We have rights. We live here. You are guests," I corrected him. "Your 7-day agreement ends tomorrow. But given that you tried to secretly move furniture in to squat in my basement, your stay is terminated immediately." "Mom, you can't just throw us out on the street," Lily cried. Grabbing my arm, I stepped back, breaking her grip. "I didn't throw you out. You threw yourselves out. Jared has $30,000 in credit card debt. His truck is about to be repossessed. Did he mention that to you before the wedding?" Lily froze. She slowly turned to look at Jared, his face drained of color. "You went through my things," Jared sputtered. "I didn't have to. You yell on the phone in my backyard," I replied. "The movers charge by the hour. Jared, I suggest you give them the new address." I turned around, walked up the steps, and pulled my front door shut. I slid the heavy metal deadbolt into place. Through the living room window, I watched the fallout. Jared was frantically waving his hands, trying to explain himself to Lily. Lily crossed her arms, shaking her head as she backed away from him. The movers honked again, tired of waiting. Jared finally jogged over to the truck, handed the driver the storage receipt, and pointed down the street. The truck rumbled away. Jared grabbed the handles of 2 suitcases. He barked an order at Lily. She didn't move. She just stared at my front door. Eventually, she picked up her own bags and followed him toward the bus stop at the corner. I walked into the guest room, stripped the bed sheets, and sprayed the room with lavender. The silence in the house was profound. It didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. Over the next few weeks, I reclaimed my space, I reorganized my study. I started taking my morning coffee on the back patio without the sound of a television blaring through the walls. I booked that solo trip to Italy, paying for it with the money I saved from cutting off their monthly allowance. I received a few angry text messages from Jared. I blocked his number. I received several long, emotional messages from Lily, blaming me for her ruined honeymoon and her stressful living situation. I didn't reply to the blame. I simply told her that I loved her, but I would not enable her husband's disrespect. The Mustang stayed safely locked in the garage. My bank accounts remained secure. Jared thought my money was his safety net. He thought he could insult me, tear up my gifts, and still sleep comfortably under my roof. He mistook my silence for weakness. He didn't realize that a woman who doesn't waste time screaming is a woman who spends her energy planning. Exactly 1 month after I locked the door, a familiar figure walked up my driveway. I watched through the kitchen window. It was Lily. She was alone. She didn't have a suitcase. She just held her purse tightly against her chest. I dried my hands on a towel and walked to the front door. I unlocked the deadbolt, but kept the screen door shut. "Hi, Mom," Lily said softly. She looked tired. Her clothes were wrinkled, and the arrogant spark she had carried on her wedding day was completely gone. "Hello, Lily." "Jared's truck got repossessed yesterday," she admitted, looking down at her shoes. "We're living in a tiny studio above a laundromat. He's angry all the time. I didn't know about the debt." "Mom, I really didn't." I looked at my daughter. My heart ached for her, but my boundaries remained firm. "I'm sorry you are going through this," I said. "Can I come home?" she whispered, tears finally spilling over her eyelashes. Just for a little while. Just until I sort things out with him." I took a deep breath. "You can come in for a cup of coffee," I told her, unlocking the screen door. "We can talk. We can plan. But you do not live here anymore. Lily, you are an adult. You need to build your own life. And you cannot use my house to hide from the choices you made." She stepped inside, wiping her eyes. She didn't argue. She nodded slowly, understanding that the safety net was gone, replaced by something much stronger, a mirror. We sat in the kitchen. I poured her a cup of coffee. We talked for an hour. When she left, she hugged me tightly at the door. I watched her walk down the street to the bus stop. I locked my door, walked back into my quiet, peaceful house, and began packing my suitcase for Rome. For the first time in years, the only life I was responsible for was my own.